you hit the ball, you catch the ball, you throw the ball. If you can do those three things, the does it matter if you look like someone beat you with the ugly stick your whole life? Why does that matter?
Yeah, could you imagine like Danny DeVito having a career, but you can't because you're not good looking enough?
Welcome to the What's Our Verdict podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Matson Heiner.
Better red than dead.
Javier Ortiz.
What is up, my nerds?
And Ian Anderson.
Some shit.
Do you ever find yourself wondering if you should spend the time, money, or both on a movie? We're here to answer that question for you. Each week we put a movie on trial, discuss the facts, pass judgment, and let you know our verdict. We appreciate your help growing the podcast. Go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button. Tell a friend about us. Go check out our website, whatsourverdict.com. Subscribe to our email list for exclusive content and updates. Today we're reviewing the movie Moneyball. It was released September 23rd, 2011. It was written by Steve Zalian and Aaron Sorkin. It was directed by Bennett Miller. Stars Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, Chris Pratt, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Ken Medlock, and Karis Dorsey. The Oakland A's general manager Billy Beane attempts to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players. If you haven't seen this movie and you want to avoid spoilers, go ahead and pause here. Go watch the movie. Once you watch it, come back, pick up where you left off. If you don't care about spoilers, stick around. We're about to spoil the shit out of this thing. Interesting movie, guys. Billy Beane. So let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. The dude had to go out on an island to try to change baseball. And it's kind of interesting to think about from a perspective of what he was doing. He was kind of forced into the situation of they have this lean budget on this small market team of the Oakland A's.
Damn,
and he has to compete with all these other rich teams, the Yankees, the Red Sox, all these teams that just have money crawling out of their ears. But I think a lot of people, when I watch this movie, it seems like they want to try to give him credit for, he's just like, oh, I'm going to change the game here instead of, well, I need to do something different. So how do we do that? A little bit of both. But to me, I look at it and go, he was forced into the situation to make those changes. What do you guys think about that whole setup of Billy Beane?
Well, from the way the movie portrays it, it wasn't really his idea to begin with, to be frank. I'm just, to me, it kind of feels like classic case of you work with someone, aka your manager, that hears of a great idea from you and then runs with it and then kind of brings you in at the tail end and says, hey, this is what I did. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to get like a little bit of the credit.
But what's funny is that guy totally would have gone down if it went poorly, right? So the whole movie, they're like, oh, we're both on the line here. But which one of them got a multi-million-dollar sign-on deal at the end of the movie? It was
what you'd like to think is, and they don't, and I totally agree with you, Javier, but you wonder if Billy Beane would have been smart enough to say, well, wherever I go, like this kid's coming with me, because without him, like where would we be? But I don't know, maybe the book or some documentary tells more about that.
The true story about him is that Peter Brand guy was based on a number of assistants that Billy Beane had. The one that he actually used the numbers and they pulled in that situation was a guy named Paul D. Podesta. And he played football, wanted to be a football coach, but ended up doing this baseball thing. And he actually asked for his name not to be used, his likeness not to be used in the movie. That's how we ended up with Jonah Hill as Peter Brand, because he didn't want to be represented specifically. And he actually, I don't know, but he actually went on to be a part of a number of different teams besides the A's. He actually, in 2016, was hired by the Cleveland Browns to do the same shit for football. So, and it lasted all of like 2 years and then they were done. But yeah, it was ugly.
But his character, Peter Brandt's character, was based off that guy's character who you're describing.
The numbers part of it. So the fact that like the whole analysis and player, getting on base, things like that, all of that was based on his. But the character itself, like the way that he acted, his personality was based on.
So he didn't come from Cleveland and anything like that? Man, See, now knowing that, I hate that when I've got to be honest, when they take true stories and then they insert a fictional element, a strong fictional element of a reason why we probably like this movie, because I like Jonah Hill's character. That does annoy me quite a bit.
Well, so I mean, he did work for the Indians, but he was a scout, and then he was what they call an advanced scout. And then he did become an assistant to the general manager for the team for a minute, but it wasn't, he was hired normally. It wasn't like that he went in there and there was all this drama around, them not letting him have players or different things like that. Like they just went in and there was conversations about these numbers and why they were choosing the players that they were choosing. And he ended up hiring this guy from the Indians, but like a normal, it wasn't like he went and poached him or like he calls him at 3 a.m. and said, I just bought you from the Cleveland Indians. It wasn't anything that dramatic.
Which, how does employment in Major League Baseball work? You can just buy people from other, and then that dude just has to move cities? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they meant he bought out his contract, because most of the time in sports, regardless of where you're at, you're contracted. You do have contracts. You're not allowed to, because they have NDAs. They have all these different things that you're not allowed to go talk about. So when he says that, I'm assuming it's, I bought your contract or I paid off your contract so you could go somewhere else without breaking it.
And usually you come with like soda machines too.
Yeah, no shit. That was real though.
Freaking petty owner. Can't even, has to charges people $1 for soda. Maybe you shouldn't own a sports team.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
I mean, it is open. It's crazy. Have any of you like been in obviously not to that grand of a scale, right? But like tried to make changes and been out on that island where you're like, oh shit, if this doesn't work, I'm in trouble.
Oh, like what Billy Beane, where he basically staked his reputation on Moneyball, like the analytics of baseball.
Have any of you done anything? Obviously, again, like I said, not that scale, right? Where you're talking about a national sport, but something like at work where you like, I want to make a change and here's the change. And you're kind of like, oh shit, if this doesn't work, I'm in for it. You know what I mean?
I feel like I'm Jonah Hill's character waiting to find my Billy Beane.
I like that.
No, I mean, I can't say I've made anything drastic like that where I went out on a whim and did something that really put myself in a strong financial risk or security risk of that regard. No, nothing close. Honestly, the closest thing I can think of, and this isn't even remotely close, is like moving into tech recruiting, because I knew nothing about it. Went to a big company and staked my reputation that I could do it. But even that seems just very child's play to what he did.
Well, and that's like, I don't know that I would have the balls to do that. Like, to go, I'm going to risk my whole career on, because let's be honest, if this guy doesn't do this, right? So he goes back to his scouts and he lets him grab people and he lets him bring them in who was there. And they just kind of put together a team based on that. He's going to keep his job. You know what I mean? Like he's going to be able to find enough success for a small market team to be able to probably keep his job. So he had no real incentive other than the backstory that they give that he hated the way that players were recruited, and then on top of that, the fact that he wants to win. So I don't know that I would ever have the balls to just say, here's my career on the line.
Be like us, since we're all in like HR recruiting, basically saying, no, we're going to go do our own talent development, the independent thing. If for you, JJ, or Javier and I, is starting our own like recruiting agency and having some special analytics spin. Doing that right now in this day and age seems like absolute suicide at the moment.
Well, as long as Ian's doing all our analytics, I'm in.
But going back to what you just said, JJ, about Billy Beane kind of going out on a limb for the reasons you mentioned about he didn't like the way players were recruited and the fact that he wanted to win. I'm sure he wrote more about it, or I don't know what it is, but when at the end of the movie, when the Red Sox manager put all that money in front of him, I think it was like $12 million, highest paid GM in sports ever. Why? That was one of, and maybe you can ask this question, like, why did he turn that down? Because he could have made a lot of money, could have very much won with the Red Sox, and had the full support of an owner that wasn't going to nickel and dime him, where he actually had to buy a player to get them on his roster. So to me, based off what you identified, why he didn't, I think the movie told us he didn't take it because he didn't want to base his decision off of money. But I felt there was so many other factors that still would have made that a positive situation.
Yeah. So I think the movie made it seem like it was for his daughter, right? If he moved out of Oakland, then he wouldn't have as much time. But dude, if you're raking in $12 million a year, you could figure this out, right? It's like flights are cheap if you have $12 million a year.
Well, I think he probably could have gotten a written in where he's like, hey, you're going to pay for weekly flights that I can go home or whatever. Sure, right. Done.
Or hell, take this to court. Dude, I make $12 million a year. I can afford a hella nice attorney, and I can tell a judge she'll be well taken care of. Yeah, like I don't know. I'm with you, man. So there's got to be ways around whatever reasons he had to turn down that kind of money. Could have been solved with that kind of money, you know?
Okay, two things. One, it was about his daughter, and he did interviews after the movie where he talks about, people asked him, do you regret turning down the job at Boston because you would have probably won some World Series? They've won 3 since he got that offer, and plus you would have been making buku bucks. And he says, no, I don't regret it because I was there for all of the important things for my kid, who was a teenager at the time and when it happened. So he's like, I don't regret it. He goes, and that's what he says the main reason was his kid. He goes, that whole money thing was kind of a dramatic thing and part of the movie. And while he did feel that way and had made that commitment, it wasn't something that it weighed as heavily as his family. Second, with that, yes, I hear what you're saying, that $12.5 million a year is a lot of money, but at the same time, and it's just so you know, it's not 12.5 a year. It's 12.5 million over 5 years, which is still a shit ton of money.
Whoa.
Don't look at me like that.
Jeez, I got scraping the poverty line.
So what was he making before that? Like $1 million over 5 years and having to buy his own underwear and soda?
Oh my goodness. Probably not. I'm not sure, but it was in the millions, I'm sure. Okay, so it looks like up until 2016, he was making $1 million a year. So
yeah, it's gonna be hard to convince me that this dude has money problems.
Well, I don't think nobody said he has money problems. He wasn't saying he has. He said he wouldn't make a decision based on money.
Yeah, that's something rich people say. That is a rich person luxury, not making decisions based on money. You get that luxury when you're making $1 million a year.
To the point of raising his kid and being there for his kid, yes, he probably could have made some things work. But the amount of stress that he probably feels being a GM and making sure he's running this baseball team and making those decisions, and then to have to add on to that traveling twice a week or picking his daughter up and finding something, you know what I mean? Like that added stress, like I get it. Like I think looking at
That's a good point.
Why would you put that much more on yourself, and how would your performance suffer even in Boston? Something's got to give, right? You're either going to spend less time with your daughter in order to win the World Series with Boston, or you're going to not be as committed to Boston because you have to travel so much to be there for your family and your daughter. That's so important. So it's one of those things where you got to find that balance. And I don't know that you could. Boston to LA is a long fucking trip.
Is he still there, JJ?
He is. He's the president of baseball operations at the Oakland A's. He's no longer the GM, but he's like above the GM, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
I totally get everything that you're saying, and I don't get me wrong, like family's important to me, and I think I probably would have leaned more in his decision making, but there are other owners, and knowing what I know about the Oakland franchise and in general, like with an owner that is that difficult, and there's other teams that are close by, like at some point I feel like if you still want to win, maybe get an owner that can afford to win a little bit more, because in baseball it is a very big thing. Now, what would be totally different if this was, say, the NFL and had a salary cap, then I don't even think I'd say anything. I'd be like, look, you want to be close to your kid, you want to win, you have the confines everywhere. With baseball, money a lot of times is king. Granted, you can still do it, it's possible, but more often than not, money is king.
Could you imagine going to the Boston Red Sox and just completely fucking it up, right? Just like tanking their season? Because like if you're the GM of the Oakland A's and you just have a terrible season, it's like, yeah, it's just like an average.
Got no money,
for us, right? Yeah, like you got a million excuses. You go to the Boston Red Sox and you have a bad season, you have no excuse.
Well, it's true. Their fans will eat you alive.
Right. So I don't know, maybe that played into the decision. He didn't want to be ran out of Boston.
Here's the thing. He would have been next in a long line of GMs since the days of Babe Ruth that got run out of Boston because they couldn't win the final game of the season, because Boston was wretched and that didn't win a World Series for like 50 some odd years or some shit.
Since it was like 1918.
Yeah, it was gross. Like how long it had been since
until 2004, and then they won it like 2 years after Moneyball. But yeah, that's a good point, Javier. There's immense pressure there, and in Oakland, like who cares about baseball there? Not that many people, because nobody goes to games.
Who even cares about Oakland, the city? Right? There's just no pressure there.
Well, I guess the Warriors don't, because they left. So fair point.
I've often wondered every time I watch this, like the scouting process and what they based shit on in baseball boggles my mind, because it's still to this day they talk about like the look test, like the eye candy.
The eye test. Yeah, nice face.
Yeah,
hey, you can't have an ugly girlfriend because it alludes to lack of confidence.
Dude, that shit's real. So I love baseball, and I have a video game that's baseball. And as you play it, like there's a guy that gets up, and I can't remember who it is, but it's the same guy. Every time I play this team, this announcer says, man, this is like this guy's the GM's dream. He's got this, and he names off all these skills that he has on the field, right? And then he passes the eye test. And I'm like, how the fuck is this a thing? Like, you're standing at a fucking baseball field, you hit the ball, you catch the ball, you throw the ball. If you can do those three things, the fuck does it matter if you look like someone beat you with the ugly stick your whole life? Why does that fucking matter?
Yeah, could you imagine like Danny DeVito having a career, but you can't because you're not good looking enough?
Oh my goodness.
Fair point.
Kills me. But I do love those scenes where they're in like the scout room at the beginning of the movie, near the beginning of the movie, and Billy Beane just looked like he looks so flabbergasted by these bullshit conversations that are happening with all these scouts, and he's just sitting there shaking his head. And I love when he just goes off. He goes, "The fuck are we talking about, then?"
He says that like 4 times throughout the movie, and seriously, like I've started saying that. Like, yeah. What are we talking about? It's such a good line.
Now, can we get to probably my favorite part of this movie? The ultimate FU is when we know what I'm getting. The manager, the in-game manager, who consistently is not playing the correct lineup to the way that he drafted the team, and he's like, you know what am I gonna do? He just ships out the people that this manager is playing, and then comes back to him and says, like, he brings Jason Giambi, and he's like, he's packing. Pena's gone, and some other dude was gone as well, and he's just like, F you, bro. You wanted it. Here it is. Start these people.
Dude, that was big dick energy. As someone who doesn't follow sports at all, were those names that they were throwing around of the players, were those well-known names?
Yeah, those are real people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real people, real trades, all of that kind of stuff. All of that was very real. They did a really good job with the research in this film, because even like the box score stuff in the games that they showed was all correct. And part of that's because they interweave the actual footage of these games so often with the filmed footage for the movie. But there's a lot of accuracy there. Yeah, but he traded Pena. He sent 2 pitchers down, and then he did something else. Well, of course, Giambi. He got rid of Jason Giambi, but that was a personal thing.
Amazing FU to that manager. And you know what? And then ESPN, I love that they did some of the live feeds, were crediting the manager for the success. And that I wanted Billy Beane to come back in that guy's office and be like, and let's not forget, this isn't you. This is my doing.
Right.
I just love that he actually didn't give a shit. Like when they're sitting there watching that, and the announcers are like, and Art Howe has been this calming influence in the dugout or whatever. And Jonah Hill's character's like, what the fuck? They're saying this is Art. He goes, I don't give a shit as long as we're winning games. He goes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like all I heard was winning streak or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. 7 games or something. Yeah, it was a good one.
JJ, something I didn't text you that just thought about this for those that are big sports watchers. The feeling Billy Beane has where he doesn't want to be at the games because he doesn't want to affect the outlook. I know you as a big Buckeyes fan sometimes have that feeling of like, man, if I had watched this game, maybe it would have been different. But more so, man, if I just don't watch this quarter or this game, like it'll just work out. We'll win. It'll be good. Like, have you ever had that feeling before? Because I definitely have had that feeling where you just don't want to F it up.
Oh, speaking of baseball, when the Cleveland Indians were in the World Series, what was it, 3 years ago? And they had the rain delay, and it was Game 7, rain delay. The Indians were on a hot streak. They'd scored like 4 runs. They tied it, and then there was a rain delay, and so that whole game with the rain delay, I didn't watch it because I didn't watch the first 3 games because I was like, my Indians will never win the World Series ever again, most likely, and it breaks my soul. But I was like, I'm not watching it because they're there, they have this chance. I was like, but I'm not going to get my heart broken again. I'm a Cleveland guy. It's not going to work. So I didn't watch it. Well, then they're winning. Like they were up like 2-1 in the first 3 games.
I can't start watching now. I'm going to ruin it.
Exactly. So I would check scores scores, just like Billy Beane was in this movie. Like, I would flip it on the TV for like a second, and then I would turn it off just to see. And then I would check the scores on Google and see where it was at. And then the last game, it was killing me to not watch this shit, because I'm sitting here watching the score and I see that they're taking the lead, and then the rain delay happens. And I literally looked at Case and I was like, we're fucked. And she goes, what do you mean? She goes, no, it's just a rain delay. I'm like, I know, but you just killed the momentum of this game. They're fucked. And of course they come back, and I think it was the Dodgers go on a fucking run, or whoever the hell it was, and win the game. Oh, it was the Cubs. The Cubs.
Yeah, the Cubs won.
Oh,
but I totally resonate with that feeling with you and Billy Beane, where it's just stupidly irrational. But every sports fan has felt that way.
Well, and another funny story about that. So I'm not a Jazz fan. I don't like basketball to be for the most part at all. But I've been to a handful of Jazz games. I have never ever been to a Jazz game and they've won. The only time, and that started as a little kid. So when I was like 12 years old, we were living in Kentucky, and we came out to Utah to visit family, and my uncle and my cousin and myself and my dad went to a Jazz game against the Cleveland Cavaliers back when it was the old school Cleveland Cavaliers, Mark Price, Craig Elo, all those guys. So we're watching this, and my dad and I are rooting for Cleveland, obviously, because we were from there, and Cleveland won on a last second shot by Mark Price. And from that day on, I have never been to a Jazz game and watched the Jazz win, ever. So all my buddies that I worked with at the car dealership were like, they're big Jazz fans. And they hear that I was like, I think I'm going to go to the Jazz game. And they're like, no, you're fucking not. Do not fucking go. Because I've never been, and they've won, ever.
So when I first moved to Utah, I didn't know that there was a basketball team here called the Jazz. I just thought there were a lot of jazz fans, like the music, jazz. And I'm like, that's so strange to me.
Hey, Javier, by the way, thanks for that basketball. It's still proudly displayed in my basement.
Oh, good. I for Madsen's birthday, I got him because the Jazz's coach died like earlier this year or whatever. Yeah, and there was an estate sale. So some dude picked up a couple of basketballs. So I bought a signed basketball with him and like the whole team.
A great gift. But when Javier gave it to me, like, I'll be honest, I was like, Javier gave me a basketball signed by the Jazz? Like, yeah. It's just not like a Javier thing to do from a sports perspective. So I was taken aback by it. I wasn't even
like sure if he was a sports fan or Jazz. I'm still not convinced Jazz is a real team. So I was like kind of concerned it just got hustled. You know, I don't know what these guys' signatures look like. So just like, I sure hope I'm buying him a worthwhile gift and some like crackhead hobo didn't just scribble all over the basketball.
Well, either way, it's a really nice basketball. So
yeah, I think we can play with it, I guess.
One day his kid will. That's always what happens.
Big dick energy. That's my favorite part of this podcast. Sandlot.
Yeah. All right. So what do you guys think of Jonah Hill? Because to me, like, this is his best movie ever. Yeah. But I'm not a fan.
There are a number of actors that I think are only technically actors because they've been in movies. Otherwise, they absolutely suck. And Jonah Hill is one of them. Except in this movie, I was like, wow, this kid is actually acting.
Yeah, I love the way that he plays off of Brad Pitt so well.
I guess to that question, does nobody like him in Wolf on Wall Street here?
I actually haven't seen that.
I couldn't get past those teeth. Like, he did a great job in it, but his mouth bothered me. Those veneers.
Agreed with the veneers, but I thought he did well in that movie. Where it's same with this. This is the best Jonah Hill movie, to what Javier said. That I love that phrase. I've never heard that. Just because you're in a movie. Or how did you say? You say it again, Javier. I liked what you said.
I don't remember. I think I said that there are some actors who are only technically actors because they've been in movies.
Yeah. Exactly. Because a lot of his movies just are complete garbage. But really, in this movie, I just like how he plays off of Billy Beane, like we talked about in his character. And I'm like, why doesn't he try to do this more? Like, why isn't he played for more roles like this? Because if he is, I'd go see him a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I'm kind of tired of his like comedic stuff. And granted, I haven't really seen anything with him in a long time, probably because of that. I don't even know if he still acts.
Well, he hasn't done a lot, and he lost a bunch of weight.
Didn't he gain a lot of it back though?
No, and then he did, and then he lost it all again.
Okay,
he's getting pretty thin right now, I think. Yeah, like, I would totally watch more of him like this. Yeah, right? like what's that dude from? Oh my gosh, the dude from Twilight that we've seen like 9 movies.
Oh, Robert Pattinson. Yeah.
Before,
he's resurrected.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Jonah Hill could totally resurrect for me if he played more roles like this. Like Steve Carell. Like, I actually really like him as an actor now that I've seen him in The Big Short and Vice, like a couple other movies. I think he could do well as one of those comedic or like shitty actors if he wanted to take on more serious roles.
Agreed.
I completely agree, especially about Steve Carell. I couldn't stand that guy.
Right.
And now he's done some movies that I really like. The Big Short's really good. I like that. You brought up a scene earlier before we started about the whole Ricardo Rincon trade scene and this frenetic scene. So tell us what you liked about it. I want to hear your perspective on this scene.
Yeah. Dude, honestly, I've watched that scene since watching the movie. It's going to be my go-to like problem solving scene. Like if I'm ever stuck on something, I'm going to watch that because man, he doesn't find good deals. He makes good deals. Right. And that was just so cool to watch him like go between like 3 different phones and like 4 different people and just bullshitting his way through it. Right. He's like, oh yeah, they're taking him. It's a done deal. It was nowhere near a done deal when he's telling that to the other guy. Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, the best part is when he calls Mark Jacobs, he's talking to the dude in Cleveland and he's like, oh yeah, he goes, I think the market on Rincon is softening and with San Diego or whoever it was. And then he's sitting there talking to himself and he goes, yeah, they're never going to take him. He goes, they got Bonds and they got this and they got that. And he goes, the Giants are not going to budge. And he's like, yeah, I agree. So then he starts calling somebody else to get them on the hook. He goes, we just got to soften the market on Rincon. And I'm just like, and then my favorite part of that is he's stuffing popcorn in his face the whole time.
Yeah.
And then the guy calls from Cleveland and he spits it out on his floor so he can start talking again.
But the funny thing about that, if you guys have seen Draft Day, there's kind of some similar scenes like that where, I mean, I don't know how true to form these all exactly are, but most of these times these teams are dealing with really strict deadlines, especially during like Draft Day. And a lot of this stuff, you got to have that confidence. You just got to wheel and deal and kind of spew stuff out of your ass and get it to work.
Draft Day, we should watch Draft Day one of these times. That's one of my favorite movies. And for no other, like, it's funny than the end scene, you pancake eating motherfucker. Like, it's just, yeah, it's a great scene. I'm going to make you guys watch that one of these days down the road.
I love when Jonah Hill gets on the phone. It's like a completely different situation where he's like this little mouse and he's like talking. At the end, he's like, okay, thank you. And he like hangs up and he's like, thank you.
And when he adds the please, he's like, did Billy say that? No, I added the please.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
I also like the scene where he has to tell, I think it's Pena, that he's been traded because Billy Beane makes him finally do that. And then it kind of runs true to form, like Billy Beane is talking, the guy grabs paper, looks at it, he's like, that's it? He's like, yep. And he just walks out.
When I love the big sigh when he walks out of the room, he's like, okay, that's done. Yeah.
Because if you traded Javier, he would have berated you for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's one of those things in that world that I just don't understand. Like, is that pretty normal just to be traded?
Oh yeah. Straight up, super normal.
Yeah, there's a deadline halfway through the season, and as you get close to the trade deadline, you start seeing people just get traded left and right, man.
Is it accurate? Like they trade one of the guys, and he tells him like, "Go have him get undressed because he's not playing against me tonight." Like, is that?
Yeah, yeah, that happens.
Yep,
made me laugh. Can you imagine him being like your favorite player and going to the stadium to watch him, and then he comes out for the other team?
Yeah.
And then some guy's like, bro, take that jersey out. You don't play for us no more. But the funny thing is, that's why some of these companies now have like buyback jersey programs, because this happens so much.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Especially baseball and soccer. Baseball and Major League Soccer, two of them, it happens constantly. Well, Major League Soccer even has more because they'll ship players off to like Europe to play for a team for X amount of time to just go get experience. And so they're on the team, and then the next thing you know, they're not playing for 6 months because they're over in Europe. So you got to become like an Arsenal fan to watch your favorite player now.
Or worse, you're in baseball and you get sent down like that one player you had to because of the roster. That sucks, because then you're back in like AAA, AA, where you're on the bus, you're living in the dumps, and that's what really sucks.
Yeah, you're playing for the Orem Owls or the Ogden Raptors.
From Major League back down
all the time.
Oh yeah,
all the time. Yeah, if they need roster room. If like what happens in Moneyball. So they pick up Ricardo Rincon, this pitcher, and he has to go in and tell Magnante, this old veteran pitcher who's been struggling, when he says, "Oh, I've been traded," and he looks at him and he's like, "No," that's telling him, "No, dude, you're headed back down to the minors. We got to send him down." So they send him back down. So they're still on the team, technically part of the organization. They're getting paid, but they take a huge pay cut, and they're basically playing baseball with amateurs, kids.
That sucks. That's insulting.
Yeah, baseball's a brutal sport, because baseball, you get drafted. So they show Billy Beane get drafted in this, right? Well, they show him he's an exception to the rule. Baseball players don't get drafted and go right to the major leagues. It's not the NFL, it's not the NBA. They get drafted and then they get sent down to the lowest league. They get sent down to these farm clubs to prove themselves and to continue to gain experience in baseball. And then you can work your way up through the 3 levels of minor league baseball to finally maybe get a chance to get into the show.
And even then, you don't make great money until you played in the show for like major leagues for like 4 or 5 years. And then that's why baseball gets outlandish money, because at that point, man.
And their contract terms are the lowest. So your rookie contract is 6 years long. You have to play in the majors for 6 years before you can get great money. So, and by great money, I mean the ridiculous money. They're still making hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. That's
why you want to be a pro athlete, play a different sport, because it's easier to make the big money.
Baseball ain't it, because it's you work your ass off even after being drafted. So
anyway, if you guys want to be a professional athlete, be a professional boxer. It is super easy to be a pro boxer. You literally just accept money for a fight and you're a pro boxer. So
yeah, but see, then I got to take a punch.
Oh, dude, I watched my coach fight this one dude who literally took 3 punches from my coach, took a knee, and just stayed down. Probably made like $200.
That'd be me, dude. I'd be like, "Oh, you win. Fuck, I'm done."
It was like some weak ass body shot that like just brought him to his knee, and he's like, "I'm good."
That's the worst for me. Fat kid like me, I'm out. So I did want to talk about the last game of the streak, right? So they get on this streak and you get to that last game and it kind of builds on that whole fear of him jinxing the team that we talked about. So he shows up because they're up by 11 fucking runs. I mean, it's silly. There's no way they lose this game. And then he walks in the stadium and they start to lose the game. So really interesting to me. It's just like he says, it's hard not to be romantic about baseball, because you watch this team that's losing it. And then this kid that they brought in who can't play his typical position because he's got nerve damage. Everybody wanted him to not be part of the team. The on-field manager kept not playing Hatteberg because he was a catcher. And this kid comes in and dinks a home run to win this game, walk off. What a freak. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because that's the shit that's so cool about baseball. What did you guys think about that whole streak in the last game in the streak to get 20?
I thought they were going to lose it because I didn't know the history. So I thought like, oh yeah, they're up by 11 and the team comes back, they're going to lose this, and there goes the streak. But I do like the part you talked about, Hatteberg, especially when they sit down, like seeing kind of the behind the scenes of like the family life and what he went through, and then having to step into this position he never played for. Like I thought that was a kind of interesting story to include alongside all the other stories that are going on in this movie. But yeah, the streak, I thought it was over.
For me, it's kind of what I talked about beforehand about like not wanting to jinx the moment, because that's exactly what started. Me being a sports, I know exactly what he was thinking as that first run was scored. He's like, man, why did I come back? Shouldn't have listened to my daughter. I'm going back in. We could lose now. I ruined this thing. Like, what was I thinking? All those thoughts is what I'm thinking as a sports fan. And you just know he's agonizing. Every time a run is scored, he's just punishing himself. He's just feeling like the absolute worst. And then when that homer is hit, I'm sure he's like, I'm sure maybe he had those thoughts about baseball being romantic, but when he found out which player hit it, that's when I'm sure he was like, man, baseball just, it crushes you and then it lifts you up, because of all the people to hit that homer, as you were kind of talking about, so fitting that it had to be that one individual to do it. And sports is romantic in a lot of ways. It's not just baseball. That's one of the things I think we like about sports is what other medium do we have that can produce that swing of emotions in that short period of time? Sports, for me, besides probably war and someone dying right in front of you or tragic things like that, sports is the only other medium that we have that can provide those wide ranging of emotions. And I think that's why a lot of people love it, me included.
I don't know, man. The stock market swings pretty hard.
Hey, good example. That very true. Money, sports, and blood, probably. Blood being like family war, stuff like those are probably the things that fluctuate stuff the most. Good point, Ian.
So I do have to say, I think that was, as fun as that home run was, I thought it was more entertaining watching the home run of the guy that didn't realize he hit a home run. Like, that was super funny to watch.
Oh yeah, that clip.
I just love the conversation leading up to it, right? So he's gotten all this money offered to, and he's like, I don't want to watch film right now. Like, he's like, come on anyway. Yeah, and I love that scene, Ian, where he's just like, this is our 250-pound catcher for, on Visalia's team. And he's about to do something he never does. And poor kid falls, and turns out that he hit a home run, and everybody's patting him on the ass from the other teams, telling him, no, dude, you hit a home run. Get the fuck out of here. So funny. I love this movie. Should we rate it?
Let's do it.
Okay. I will go first. I love baseball. I love this movie. Casey and I saw this in the theater when we were living in Ohio, and I was so tickled by it. I was actually worried about it because I was like, how do you make a movie about this whole statistical thing? And I remember this season. I remember hearing about the streak with the Athletics, and I remember it was just a cool time for baseball. Interesting changes happened after that, where they did a hybrid version of it in Boston, where you had the big stars plus all these guys that were supporting acts that could get on base and score runs. So it was really fun to see a difference in baseball. It's kind of fun to watch, like, the interpretation of how baseball used to be, where it was just kind of ridiculous about why people felt like these guys were going to be good baseball players. So I love the movie. I thought it was very well acted across the board. I thought it was tense. They did a great job weaving in the real footage for the game. It was so insane that when Hatterberg hit that home run, you can see Chris Pratt swing the bat and take the step back just like Hatterberg did. And so I was like, this is impressive, the amount of work that they would have had to put in to make sure that everything stayed accurate, looked great. It really made me miss Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's so good. It was sad when he passed, and he's such a great actor. Even as this gristled, ornery baseball manager, like, I just enjoyed his performance. Overall, just love this movie. It's a lot of fun. I've watched it 100 times. I'll watch it 100 more. I'm going to give it a 4.5. And I think the only reason I don't give it a 5 is just because there are moments to me that felt a little draggy. I think there was a little even more that they didn't need to have. And then at the end, it felt a little rushed. Like, it was like, whoa, we went from the streak to the ALDS. Like, was there shit that happened in between those two things? So anyway, that was my big thing. Mattson.
So I'm going to give this movie a solid 4. Most of what JJ already said is the reasons why I like this movie. JJ answered my question of why he wasn't giving this a 5. The reason it's not a little bit higher in the upper echelons of Remember the Titans or Friday Night Lights for me is, while I think this movie is a very well-crafted story and is very well acted and is captivating, not taking anything away from it. I love how JJ talked about, one thing I really love is they interweave actual footage of what happened in this story, which I think some of the older sports movies don't have the luxury of doing exactly, and that's no knock on them. That's what this movie does really well, and I enjoyed that. Where it misses some of the word for me is the feels. Like, Remember the Titans with the music and kind of the message that it's giving. That's not what Moneyball was really about, because to me, it's not connected to a movement of that nature. It's about a man that implements kind of a new system and finds peace amongst himself in making his decision to not go for the money. And that story really works. But the reason it's not a 5 is because of my emotional connection to what Remember the Titans gives me about kind of the team persevering through trial. And same thing with Friday Night Lights, about overcoming adversity and the desire to win and the struggle to get there even when you fall short. Moneyball doesn't hit those emotional chords for me at that level compared to those movies that I would rate a little bit higher. And because of that, that's why I give it a 4. But it is an extremely solid movie, a movie I've watched multiple times already, a movie that's very enjoyable, easy to watch at any point. But all it lacks for me is a true emotional chord to true sports, that locker room mentality. But I don't think that's what it was ever going for. Moneyball to me is almost not sport in some senses, even though it's a sport movie, where Remember the Titans and Friday Night Lights is all about the feeling of sports, if that makes sense.
Ian.
I am going to go with a 4 as well. I think this did a really good job of telling a story. Like Mattson kind of mentioned, like, it's like sports is the backdrop for telling the story, whereas it's not the main point of it. And I think they did a really good job at telling the story of Billy Beane and then expanding it so that you got other elements or fillers of different emotions and characters that, like, you get kind of a little bit more of Hatterberg's character and Jonah Hill's person. Man, it's time to be done with this podcast. I can't talk.
Peter Brand's the name you're looking for.
Peter Brand. There we go. Peter Brand. Anyways, solid 4. It's a good movie. I'll definitely probably watch it again, especially if somebody else hasn't seen it. I'll push for them to watch this movie, but there is like a little something missing to bring it up to that kind of 4.55 realm for me. So leave it at that.
Javier.
I actually surprisingly liked this movie. I watched it the first time without being prompted to. Right. I was just bored. And I saw Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, and I was skeptical, to be honest. But it was really good. I actually really liked it. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a huge sports fan. I don't follow baseball. Anyway, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. I think it was really, really good. And I would totally watch this again. In fact, I've watched a couple scenes from it since then. So awesome movie.
Matt, so why don't you tell them where they can find us?
Yeah, you can find us wherever good podcasts are found. Ghana, Apple, Spotify. Check us out on our website at whatsourverdict.com or on social media on our Instagram or Facebook or our YouTube channel where a lot of our movie reaction trailers drop and a lot of our spoiler-free for newer movies that have come out as well. So give us a look.
Awesome. Don't forget to tune in next Monday. We're going to be reviewing the movie Swing Vote with Kevin Costner. Come check that out in lieu of all the crazy political stuff that's been going on. So join us for that one next week. We appreciate you tuning into this one, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Da-na-na-na-na.